Hey guys, my guest today is Michael Vasey. We'll be talking about black-eyed kids. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Tuesday. 4 more days to the weekend. But it's a nice Tuesday. It's real sunny here. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you have a paranormal issue, we can help you. It might take us a while to get to you, but we can definitely help you with that. And in the case that it takes us a while, we do have psychics on staff who can call you and kind of see what's going on, and if it is paranormal, they can pretty much settle down whatever is going on energy-wise until we can get out there. Like I said, it only takes 1 or 2 days for us to get there. If you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, please feel free to follow if you haven't done so already. Same thing with YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, we're always looking for subscribers. Spread the word about the show. Hit that subscribe button. And if you are watching, be sure to comment in the chat room. Chat amongst yourselves. Chat with me. Chat with the guest, and be sure to leave us a thumbs up, some hearts, some happy faces, things like that. Because what that does, and as we all know, Facebook had a major crash this morning, so did Instagram. The main computers at all the social media platforms that we broadcast on see you commenting and participating, and they think that it's really cool. So what they'll do is they'll take the show and spread it out to more people. So if you could do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. My guest today, Michael Vasey. He's been on before, and I just have this fascination with black-eyed kids. I've never seen one, and I understand there's also what they call black-eyed adults as well. But I've never come in contact with a black-eyed individual. But he's got a couple books on the subject, and he writes a lot of paranormal stuff. So it's really fun to have him on. Let me get him on. We can get this thing started and start talking the spooky world of black-eyed kids. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good evening.
How you doing?
Pretty good. It's a business day, so I've already done a day's work.
I hear you. What got you into studying black-eyed kids?
Well, it's a long story. I started having paranormal experiences when I was a kid, retained my interest in ghosts and ghoulies and all things that go bump in the night. And then I did a course in magic, believe it or not. So proper magic. And all that really is learning about yourself. And I guess that convinced me that there was something more to life. And I started to collect stories. I started to collect people's paranormal experiences, primarily through a website, myhauntedlife2.com. And basically, this became like my fascination. And periodically, I'd get a story in, and it would trigger more interest in a particular topic. And I use that to sort of write a compilation of stories with some sort of investigative aspect to it. So that's really why I've written so many books, is because I kept getting stories that I thought were really interesting. And also I had personal experiences that were interesting, like I wrote one book about the old hag experience, and that was based on the fact that I got on a train to Germany, sleeper train to Germany, a few years ago, and I had a sleep paralysis experience and actually saw the entity in the luggage rack. And I thought, wow, that's pretty weird. What's all this about? So I got into sleep paralysis and the old hag, and I decided that sleep paralysis is the way that the old hag really gets to you. It's not a function of sleep paralysis. Things like this. I like to investigate these phenomena a little bit.
What makes people so creeped out about these black-eyed kids? You think?
I think it's because they're kids, and I think that people are creeped out by sort of innocence turned bad, yeah, evil innocence, and I think it's because they're kids, and nothing more really. I mean, what they are is who knows? I mean, I settled on the demonic side of things when I was writing about them and looking at them, but there are other potential explanations. And the intriguing thing is, of course, when I was doing the research, is that black eyes are a sort of feature of sort of emotional outbursts as well. People, when they get angry, are said to have black eyes. And of course, Hollywood has always portrayed evil with black eyes. So there's this whole thing about black eyes, but to put them on an innocent child is really something quite scary, I think.
That was one of my fears. My mother had, towards the end, she had dementia. We'll just say dementia. And so there's times when I had to run in the store and I would leave her in my car, and she was good about it to wait for me. And I always had that fear I was going to get in my car, sit down and look in the rearview mirror, and there'd be some kids sitting back there with black eyes. And that was always a fear of mine. That's also another fear of mine late at night here, because like they say, they come late at night, they're banging on your front door. Hey, can I use your phone? Can I do this? And it's scary. It's really scary. You don't want to open up your door.
Well, I came to a conclusion. There is a bit of I think there is a cultural aspect to it, like a cultural aspect to the mythology of black-eyed kids. Because when I did the research, I was trying to find as many stories as I could from as many different geographic locations. And I found a preponderance of stories coming from California, Texas, sort of Gulf of Mexico region. And they were all the typical modus operandi of 2 o'clock in the morning, doorbell rings, two small children dressed in Victorian clothing saying, let us in, or I want to use the phone or whatever, and getting very upset if you wouldn't let them in, and the person answering the door sort of falling into a hypnotic state, but feeling incredibly scared and frightened. And that was replicated in places like Australia and Canada. But then when you got stories like in the UK and in Europe, it takes on a slightly different mythos. In the UK, it's more of the ghost children with black eyes. They're ghosts of dead kids with black eyes. They're not standing on the doorstep, but you encounter them in the forest and places like this. And in France, it was stories of roadside kids during the day with black eyes on bicycles and things like this. And what swung it for me is there was a cultural aspect to it, sort of an expectation, depending on your cultural background. Was when I got stories from Americans in the UK and in France, and it was back to the typical doorbell, small child in Victorian clothing. So it seems as if they manifest in a certain way according to your cultural and historical sort of beliefs, I suppose.
That's interesting. Just recently, within the last couple of weeks, there have been reports of black-eyed kids coming out of Los Angeles.
Really?
In the last couple of weeks, yeah. That people were reporting. The other thing I found interesting was I had listened to another interview, and this particular person was talking about black-eyed adults.
Yeah.
So apparently they grow up. See, I didn't even think about that.
Whether they grow up, I don't know, but there's certainly black-eyed adults. And one thing, again, that I found in collecting all these stories from the kind of people that sent them to me was, again, that there seems to be a real preponderance of interactions with black-eyed adults at Walmart. So you got the Walmart parking lot, and I got so many stories of people going into Walmart, seeing sort of like a panhandler, what looked like a panhandler, but as they walk past, he would look up and have jet black eyes and call them by their first name. Yes.
Yikes.
Which would really freak the living daylights out of these people, and other such sort of stories. But they all seem to be set in the Walmart parking lots. And we've all watched videos on Walmart, but the people that go there. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, in recent months, even some of my sort of network of I would call them magical people, I suppose, they've reported having experiences. One lady in Italy said that she went to a restaurant or a cafe or something, and three women came in, and as they came in, they sort of all glared at her, and she felt very uncomfortable. And so they left very shortly afterwards, and she turned back and looked into the coffee shop, and one of the ladies was standing glaring at her through the window, and she had completely black eyes.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this sort of black-eyed phenomena definitely seems to be more prevalent than you would think. And I wonder if it's got something to do with, just what's generally going on in the world, because we've got so much negativity and wars,
Right.
and everybody's stressed out with all the things that are going on. And, so I think there's a lot of tension and nervous energy and emotional energy. And as we probably discussed last time, I think many of these entities actually feed on the fear, the emotional energy of humanity. So maybe that's what's causing this. Also, I mean, there are people, of course, that have theories that much of what is going on in the world today is, in fact, due to the influence of a demonic aspect somewhere in the upper echelons of power. They talk about they. I'm not quite sure who the they is, but we all know what they mean.
And the stories, also that I've read, especially out of your book, about how people the people that do invite them in end up getting sick. They get some kind of illness.
I mean, there's not that many. That was one of the things that really intrigued me as well. And you always wonder when you look at these stories, how many of them are just sort of made up fictional urban myth. But you do see these patterns. And when you start to see these patterns, that's when I begin to suspect that actually there's something fundamentally true to some of these stories. And the interesting thing is that try as I might, I couldn't find that many stories about people who let them in. Only one or two. And in all instances, yes, the people in the house, well, first of all, they experienced strange electrical phenomena at the time that the kids were in the house or the home, and the pets behaved in, silly ways as well. And then, of course, the pets got sick, and then the humans got sick. So it's almost as if these entities were, in fact, sucking energy from their victims. And because they got let in, they got permission, in a sense, to cross the threshold and suck more energy from their, human victim. They're like vampires, but vampires for energy.
Absolutely. What do you see, in the books you've written and the studies that you've done, on this? What do you think do you think, in your opinion, is the main contributing factor, or is there something common in all these cases?
Well, actually, the last book I wrote was called Liminal People, and actually didn't sell as well as some of my other ones, which is a little bit disappointing because I think it was good. The problem is I don't just write stories and repeat stories or rewrite stories, although some of my books are collections of stories. I try to explain, I try to build a hypothesis based on observations. And Liminal People is that kind of a book. So essentially, I came to the conclusion that we live in parallel realities. And if, the analogy that I used is like an old-fashioned radio dial where you just turn the knob to tune into all the different stations. And of course, all those radio stations are all existing in the same space, just on a different frequency. And if you really think about it, it starts to make sense that we all live in like parallel universes, because I have stories of shadow people, for example, where a human bumps into a shadow person, perhaps on the staircase of their house, and it's the shadow person that turns and runs as if it's scared of the human. And you start thinking to yourself, well, I wonder if the shadow person, the human is the shadow person to the shadow person, right? And that what this is it's two parallel universes that for some reason are just overlapping slightly at that particular moment in time. And I then started to think, well, what if some of these entities actually knew that humanity existed and liked to feed on the energy? So that on the negative side, you'd have the demonic, and on the positive side, I suppose you'd have what's called the angelic. And I started to get into all the stories about the third man, where something happens to somebody and some person shows up, helps them, cares for them, whatever, and then is gone in an instant, like a third man angelic type encounter. And then on the other side, you've got the more demonic, which I would include the black-eyed kids and black-eyed adults in that sort of area. And then you start to broaden the thing, and you start to think about, well, what about fairies and elves and these these mythological creatures? The Irish fairies were said to sort of go into the mist and go into a parallel universe. That's how they disappeared. And that sounds like maybe their universe shifted a bit further away from ours, and maybe they do exist, and maybe they still have an influence over the landscape in places like the Republic of Ireland, for example. And then you start to think, well, what about aliens? Maybe they're not aliens. Maybe they're interdimensional beings. And again, they're like in a parallel universe, and occasionally they overlap with us. So I developed this whole set of theories about liminal beings. And again, this happened because I had a weird experience myself. That's how I'm a curious person. I was out and about. I do some dowsing for earth energies, and I was dowsing earth energies outside of the city of Brno here in Czech Republic. And I saw an old lady. And the reason why I was interested in the old lady was because it was so bizarre. She was sat surrounded by about 15 completely full plastic bags, like, shopping outlet bags, Walmart, the Czech equivalent, Albert, and all this kind of stuff. And she was sitting there. She looked like she was about 85. She was dressed in strange clothing with a strange hat, like a big bonnet type hat. And she was sat on somebody's half brick wall with wooden fencing above, which was their back garden. And she had a hand between the wood and the brick, and she was kind of feeling around behind her. Well, of course, this attracted my attention because I'm thinking, what a strange looking lady with so many plastic bags. I wonder if she's homeless or she's got some kind of a problem. And I'm walking up the street dowsing. And at that point, I kind of walked and couldn't see her anymore because of the bush and stuff. And I carried on. I found a line. I measured the line. And then I thought, I'll turn around and check the line. So I did. And as I'm walking back, I come past the bush and I look to see the old lady gone. Not a bag, no lady, nothing. And I was so shocked because I'd only been gone like a minute. And how could some 85-year-old lady pick up 15 plastic bags and scarper? And I'm looking down the street and I'm looking around the corner. I actually spent about half an hour looking for this lady. And I just was like, I had this funny feeling about this person. They were so out of place and so unusual. I would have thought probably nothing of it, but a bit later that day, I was actually following this same energy line, and I went into an area where there's like garages for cars, and it was old, and some of the garages were disused, and some were used as workshops, and it looked like people drank alcohol and smoked drugs and things in this area, so it wasn't very nice. And as I'm walking through, there's an old man, and he's sat leaning against one of the garage doors. And to all intents and purposes, he looked like Santa. He had a big white beard, big long white flowing hair. He had a bobble hat on, jeans and a jacket. And he looked at me rather bizarrely. And I walked about 30 meters, turned round, gone. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a bit weird. This has happened twice now today. And I called them liminal people because they seem to be there and then gone. And subsequently, I started talking to people, and quite a lot of people have these experiences, and plastic bags often play a part. And I came to the conclusion that they might be fairy or fae type people. What they have in the plastic bags, I don't know. But this kind of shook me a little bit, and I did my usual thing, went out, started looking for stories of similar entities or beings or whatever, and wrote the book Liminal People and developed this whole theory. I'm actually working on a new one called Liminal Worlds right now. I don't know when I'll finish it because I'm really busy, but I'm sort of expanding the idea.
That's really fun. That's really interesting, especially to have that experience. Do you think, when you look at these cases, And is there a pattern to even when they like we've been talking about? You mentioned the climate that everybody's living in right now. Very stressful, war on horizon everywhere. All this is going on. That maybe the evil might be just kind of creeping in, but do you see a pattern? When you're looking at this, do you see a pattern at all for the
Well, the
sightings?
two things that seem to strike me are, one is that quite often these paranormal experiences happen when you're in a different mode of consciousness.
Hmm.
So for me, when I was dowsing, I'm plainly in a more of a meditative state,
Hmm.
concentrating on feeling the energy lines. So
Hmm.
I'm open to, perhaps I've expanded my ability to see a bit beyond the normal dimension into some part of reality that normally I wouldn't notice. That's one thing.
Hmm.
But the other thing is, I really now, especially dowsing earth energies for the last few years, and by the way, I've
Hmm.
written several books on that as well, if anybody's interested, I've come to the conclusion that this idea of playing on human emotion for
Hmm.
food or for sustenance is really correct. And, those emotions are things like fear, hopelessness, uh, lust, greed,
Hmm.
all of these negative emotions that you warned about, all of these sins, as so called, they
Hmm.
seem to be the things that provide the energy. And so as the world gets darker and darker, or at least people feel it's getting darker and darker,
Hmm.
um, they're spewing out all of this emotional energy that's kind of negative and feeding the beast, what, and who knows, maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe it is
Hmm.
like Matrix, and we're all plugged into a battery and producing all this fear emotional energy that some entity or entities are feeding off of.
Hmm.
And I think the antidote, uh, and I very strongly believe this, is to switch off the news, ignore it,
Hmm.
stop worrying about all this stuff. There's nothing we can do about it anyway. I mean, I'm not in control of what goes on in Israel or Ukraine, or
Right.
I've got no say in it. I should really, if I want to be a good human being, I should pay attention to those people around me where I have some degree of control and forget all this international nonsense.
Hmm.
And not that I shouldn't be concerned. I'm just saying, stop focusing on it, get back to living a daily life. And I think there are two antidotes: being creative, doing art or dance or whatever it is that you like doing from a creative point of view.
Hmm.
And the other thing is getting into nature and being with, the trees and what I would call the goddess, being with
Hmm.
Gaia. Because once you connect to the planet, once you connect to the planet like that, every Sunday I go hiking and dowsing in the forest, and I go on my own, totally alone. Whatever the weather, I go, and it's like a breath of fresh air, because somehow the experience just takes away all the stress, all the
Hmm.
worry. And when you're in the forest, surrounded by the planet, you realize, a lot of the stuff we worry about is not worth worrying over. It never happens.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so all of that emotional energy that we're churning out more and more and more as we worry about the this and that and what might happen, and and most of it actually never happens. We're just
Hmm.
worrying about it. We're being told to worry about it. And we're feeding some entity or entities that are actually, driving things to our destruction, perhaps. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
that's the kind of idea that I've come to. Really, I really believe that part of what's going on is related to harnessing our energy.
Absolutely, I agree with that 100% because I know I teach I teach meditation,
Yeah,
and I can tell from myself doing it daily and my students doing it daily that we are in a calmer mode, of thinking,
yeah.
because you're not worried about it. Or essentially you cut out everything that's going on around you in the outside world. And I
Well,
think
and
like
also, I mean, this the one thing I learned. The one thing I learned from the School of Magic is that magic is really, at the basic level, it's getting to know who you are
Mhm.
and learning through meditation and using some tools to understand and peel away different parts of reality,
Right.
things like the Tree of Life, Kabbalah, and these kind of things, acting out through ritual. But that's all that is using your imagination and emotionalizing some. It's like positive affirmation in a sense. It's you're doing the same sort of thing. And what happens is that you start to strip away. No, but most people are not anybody they think they are. All they are is a collection of pre-programs that they got from their parents, their teachers, their favorite politician, the friends they hang out with, the ladies they've been out with, the men they've been out with, the newspapers they've read, the TV station they listen to, and they're just parroting. It's not a thought of their own. They're just parroting it. It's like a pre-program. So when you actually sit down, and I'm sure you've experienced this in meditation, and start to try to get to the source of who am I, you start to realize that's not me. That I was taught that I don't even believe that. Get rid of it. I don't need that. And it's almost as if, you're looking at the world through rose-tinted spectacles, except those tinted spectacles were given to you by someone who wants you to see the world a certain way. And once you get rid of them, you see the world as you would see it, as you. And you go, oh my goodness me. I've been living a lie my entire life. This is not the way that I thought it was. And as soon as you do that, it's almost like an antidote to the fear mongering, because you lose interest in the news. It's like, I'm not interested. There's nothing I can do about a war in Ukraine. There's nothing I can do about some megalomaniac that runs the country.
Right.
The only thing I can do is look after me and the people around me. The only thing I've got control over is my destiny. So, stop giving all your energy to all these, I support this and I support that. That's a complete waste of your energy. What you need to do is support yourself and support the few people around you that matter to you. Charity starts at home, they said. That's what it means. And once you start to do that, all of the energy that's being generated by all these protests and, waving the flag for this and putting your Facebook badge up for that will deflate. And once all that energy deflates, there's nothing to feed on. Things will get better. That's my view.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
On who you are, focusing on you, focusing on the things you can change. And the only thing you can change is you. That's it. And if you change you, you'll change the way that you see the world. I promise.
Absolutely. When you look at this whole black-eyed kids thing and black-eyed adults, when is the, as far as your research goes, earliest account of people seeing these things?
Well, I used to think it was the guy in Texas, Brian, I forget his last name all of a sudden. Had it on the tip of my tongue 5 minutes ago. But the guy who had the experience in the car in Texas back in, I think it was it the 90s? And that was what I was told by many people. But when I was doing the research, I really did do some research. And I started digging through old books and things like that. And I actually discovered that tales of black-eyed beings actually are pervasive through human history. There are, tribes in North America that have stories about black-eyed beings or black-eyed babies being born to their females, and they basically, they basically got rid of the baby because they knew that this was a demonized entity, not human child. And they had stories about black-eyed children in the forest that would steal their soul. If you look at even sort of European history, you can find stories of black-eyed beings all the way sort of through history. So I don't think this is anything new. And that's why, to me, the sort of cultural boxing of it, the modus operandi that seems to suit the American versus the modus operandi that you see in the UK, where it's ghost kids, seems to be part of the whole mythos, because part of it is myth and part of it is reality. And that's what makes it scary.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And like you say, for each culture, it's different. The way the way people perceive this stuff.
Well, it's back to what I said about being yourself, and you'll see, be yourself, and you'll see, strip away all the stuff, and you'll see the world differently. culture is a similar sort of thing. The Brits have been raised in a certain way with a certain set of lenses. The Americans have been raised with a slightly different set of lenses. So they tend to look at the world in a different way, which means that their mythology and their urban mythology and their imaginative faculty operate slightly differently. And so the typical American black-eyed kid experience is, as I said, the Victorian dressed small child, 2 o'clock in the morning, ringing the doorbell. But for the Brit, it's the ghost child in the forest that you come across when you're hiking.
Is there a fear out there? I mean, over the years, like you say, this is built up over the years. And you think it's because there's, like you say, there's a lot of stress out there with social media, with what's going on in the world. But do you think, studying all this stuff, word of mouth, and no one's not quite sure how they, what or who these things are? I just dropped off. Hang on. Just dropped off from Mario Land. There we go. People, there's a fear of from people now because they've heard all the stories, and so they're building upon them, and they keep building upon them.
Yeah. This comes into the sort of question of what is reality as well. I mean, I came to the conclusion in the last year or two that there are two types of haunting. There are real hauntings that involve some kind of an entity, probably from a parallel dimension, that for some reason either knows about you and feeds from your emotional energy, or because of some sort of weirdness in the air at that particular point in time, just momentarily the two realities overlap sufficiently for you to encounter each other. And then there's the haunting that you haunt yourself, because you basically start to, you hear a noise, you start to use your imagination about what that noise could be. And what you're doing is you're creating a thought form or a tulpa or an egregore. And that tulpa, for a time, is your creation. But at a certain point in time, that thought form can take on a life of its own and become a poltergeist. And I think, when people get followed around by poltergeists from house to house, I think that's a haunting. They're haunting themselves. And there's some evidence, sort of associative evidence for that as well, because many times the poltergeist is associated with like an out of control emotional teenager in the home as well. So that's the energy. And again, it's the energy feeding the entity, but the entity in this case you created. It's not got an independent existence until you've given it enough energy, at which point it does have an independent existence. And the only way that it can sustain its existence is to get more energy from you.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Have you come across, I mean, I know you do paranormal investigation. Do you ever come across that sort of a scenario where you strongly suspect that the paranormal aspect is created and sustained by the person in the home?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with poltergeist cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had one case where the couple got into a huge fight and they didn't resolve it when they went to bed. So sure enough, that night they're hearing banging in the walls and the doors are slamming, and stuff. And it's one of them because they're so keyed up when they went to bed.
Yeah.
So that is more frequent than a lot of people think it is.
It is, yeah. And I think that's actually probably what happened to me as a kid, actually. I was so scared. I was so worried, so obsessed with this thing. And it followed me around. And then sort of by the time I did the course in magic and I started to do the meditation and learn how to control my emotions and my thinking and my thought patterns, that's when I realized, I spent all my life up to that moment in time lit up with all this energy like a Christmas tree. So if there was any entity passing by, it would grab me. And some of this energy I was imagining, visualizing, and creating something, And so, yeah, I'm convinced. And partly my new book, this is what it's all going to be about, is, I've kind of got the all-encompassing paranormal theory going on.
Well, there are people too, and the Constantinos, rest their souls, the Constantinos have been doing studies on, can we create ghosts ourselves, like in the form of EVPs. They had a study going on that you could create the voice on the EVP yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it. And the reverse evidence thread also proves it, and that is, when you're with someone that simply will not believe in the paranormal and nothing happens, because their disbelief kills it dead. And that's when that's when you start thinking, hang on a minute, why have they got the capability to stop things happening? Why? I think that's a key piece of evidence.
The other thing I find interesting along this line of thinking is there's a particular restaurant up in our Gold Country that's a very popular place, supposed to be very haunted. But over the years, the owners have come out to say, hey, it's not haunted. There's no ghosts here. It's been done because the stories were spread, and everybody that goes to eat there or goes to visit there believes that there's stuff in there, and so that imprints in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So sort of a self-perpetuating haunting. Yeah, I agree. Now, having said that, I think there are real paranormal as well. And there are some really interesting stories that I got that, to me, I still can't really explain or understand. I mean, my favorite story, I may have told you about it last time, I can't remember, but it was a story submitted by a couple that were driving to Texas, and they did this every year, and they decided to take a back route through the woods. I think they were going from Oklahoma or somewhere like that. And he needed some gas, and as he came around the bend, they saw an old gas station, so he pulled in. And he gets out the car and he's thinking, good Lord, these gas pumps are like from the 1950s. This is really bizarre. And the wife gets out and she goes into the store and she's looking around and they're like original Coke cans, She's thinking, gosh, this is really old fashioned, really well done, very, very neat, but, very old fashioned. And she begins to get a bit creeped out because some young kid has come up to her husband and she can see out the door this young kid talking to the husband. And so she walks across and he's trying to get the husband to take him fishing. And the husband's like, well, I can't take you fishing because we got to get, where we're going. Oh, please take me fishing. I know a really good place in the woods. And eventually the pair of them got freaked out, jumped in the car and drove like crazy as fast as they could away from this place. And they got about another 2 or 3 miles and came to a small town. And they were so shook up, they decided they'd stop and have a cup of coffee and sort of talk about what had happened. And the waitress was somebody who had been raised in the local area, from a young child. And so they said to her, well, what about that strange gas station a couple of miles down the road? She looked at them and said, there's no gas station. What gas station? And that's the kind of experience. But it's unexplainable. That's like a time warp, or I love stories like that. And just this is why I collect stories. They're some of them are absolutely fabulous.
That's an interesting story. When you were talking and saying that, it reminded me of Stephen King. Rock and Roll Heaven, Oregon. Remember when they go to Rock and Roll Heaven and Buddy Holly's doing dishes and all this is going on? That's pretty cool. Yeah,
and I've collected some wonderful, wonderful stories, and I really appreciate the people that have sent them in.
Right.
And I mean, one of my other favorite stories is the guy's cycling on one of these like bumpy cycle paths in the forest, like created because it's got the bumps and all the bits. And he's done this cycle path many, many times, but this time he suddenly looks up and he's thinking to himself, I don't recognize this part of the track. And it goes on and on and on, and it's getting darker and darker, and more ominous feeling. And then he starts to hear this noise that he can't put his finger on, and he thinks he sees this shadow in the forest. So he's like freaking out because by now he's been cycling for what seemed like half an hour, and the track is only 15-minute circle. So what the hell is going on? So he turns his bike round, and he just, the way he tells the story, he's pouring with sweat, his heart is pounding. He thinks there's something behind him, like a shadow thing coming up behind him, and he's cycling and cycling and cycling, and the forest is never ending, and he doesn't recognize anything. And all of a sudden he bursts into daylight and he's escaped out the forest. What happened there?
Right.
changed
Wow.
reality, altered reality momentarily, you know. Those
See, I
kind of
don't know.
stories are really weird. And
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
that's true.
Well, I don't know if I told you this story. Um, got off work one night. My friend and I used to work real weird hours. So we got off work. It's summer, so it's still daylight. It's like it's like 8 p.m. And we decided to go to a movie in this other town. So we have to take the freeway. And back when I was a kid, the freeway overpasses had ivy on them. Because I remember laying in the back of the hatchback, looking up at them. So as I'm driving, and we're trying to get to this movie theater, I noticed suddenly it was kind of like a kind of warp occurred. It was really weird. Everything got blurry for a second.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I'm looking at the freeway overpasses as we're going under them, and they all have ivy on them. And I'm looking out the windows, and it's really populated, between us and this town. And there were hardly any lights out there. Next thing we know, it's an hour later, and we're completely out of our place from where we're supposed to be. Now, was it a break in time? Did we get abducted by something? To this day, I don't know. But that actually happened. There were two of us in the car.
Well, lovely stories. I like those, and I know that the people that experience them, swear that they're not making it up, that it's true, and I believe them. I really do. I do believe them. I think things like that also have happened throughout human history. There's lots of myths and stories that sort of paint the same. But there's even a couple of old Hollywood movies, aren't there, about villages that appear once in 10 years and things like this.
Right, Brigadoon.
Yeah, Brigadoon.
Brigadoon, right? What do you, as a researcher, is it, like people bring these stories to you, but when you have to go back, like that further in time, how do you research this stuff? I mean, are you going to libraries, or is it microfiche, or how are you finding these stories?
Well, obviously, first of all, I use the internet. I mean, there's a lot of resource on the internet, even old books on the Google Books and things like this. But yeah, if I have to, I go looking for old literature. I read old accounts in books that either you can't get anymore and they're on the internet for some reason, but you just have to really work hard, because the internet is weird. It's like really rich, a thin vein of richness, and if you want to probe a bit deeper, it's not quite as good, and it takes a lot of work. Particularly in Czech Republic, because if I'm trying to study something from that's happened here, I'm dealing with a foreign language, and I'm dealing with a different way of the search engine working, because I have to use the right words. So it gets really tough. But you can be surprised what you find. Also, I have this network of magical friends. Magical friends on Facebook. And quite often they'll come up trumps with resources for me as well. Or they've had an experience, or they know somebody, and the next thing you know, you're off on some tack, that's really productive and takes you somewhere.
Right. That never-ending rabbit hole. The thing I find about the black-eyed kids is not only are they knocking on your door at 2 a.m. There's reports of them just kind of hanging outside the front of the house, or they hang out in people's backyard, just like they're waiting or watching or whatever the heck they're doing.
Yeah, there's one of the stories in my book, I think, where the kids are hanging out in the front yard or on the street. And actually, they'd been there the night before, but with some adults in a car. And one of them's eating an apple, and the people are very frightened and don't have anything to do with them. And eventually, the next day, they convince themselves that it really was all their imagination, didn't happen at all. And of course, they find the half-eaten apple on the front lawn.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary stuff. It really is scary stuff.
Absolutely. Actually, my best Black-Eyed Kids book is Chilling Tales of Black-Eyed Kids, and it's compilation. So it's actually a compilation of 2 books, and it has everything pretty much in it.
Let me plug that one in.
Yeah, the cover has changed since then, but that's the book, yeah.
There you go.
Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I do apologize.
That's okay. No problem.
But it's been fun. I'm glad we managed to do this. And,
yes, thank you.
do stay in touch and let me know, if I can help again. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Mr. Vasey. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, it's always fun to talk to him. We had a bit of a time mess up, It's like going through here and figuring out where he's located as opposed to, where we're located and having to get those times straight. Like he's the Czech Republic. I've kind of figured he was in England, and so I did an 8-hour change, and then it turned out to be wrong. And here we are. At least we got him on. I appreciate him coming on. Tomorrow we're going to do something fun. Tomorrow we're going to be over in the big studio, and I'm going to be building a Yoda Lego. We're going to start that project. So somebody got me a Yoda Lego, so I'm going to be building that tomorrow live. So it's just going to be kind of a kickback kind of day for us tomorrow and for you guys, and we'll just have a paranormal chat while we're building together. So we'll build this Lego live. I appreciate everybody that came in today to watch the show. I know it's earlier than everybody's used to. I really appreciate that. And Michelle, especially, thank you. And I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, our usual time. Got a couple announcements to make since we have a few more minutes here. One of them is that I do have a meditation. I've been advertising this thing as a monthly meditation club. And I think that people have the wrong impression about it. Well, what I did last night was I went ahead and changed it up over at the meetup to just plain meditation club. So when you look at it, it does clarify that it's 3 days a week for the whole month. So that might clarify it a little bit. Also, I'm going to be starting a really cool thing. A lot of people will go to Starbucks. What do you spend? $5-6, $5-6 a coffee, things like that. So what I thought of doing, and this is something that I did when I was working for newspapers, and I was an editor of newspapers, they would have this thing called Coffee with the Editor. And you could sit down with the editor and meet him somewhere, have a cup of coffee, and you could put input in towards the newspaper or ask questions about the different events that were going on around town and stuff. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a coffee with the ghost hunter. And this is going to be a virtual thing. And up to 9 people on StreamYard, maybe $5 a piece. That's not. I mean, you're going to spend that much for a coffee anyway. But this way, you'll be at home using your own coffee. So it's kind of a way to to raise funds for the show and for the paranormal team. But maybe do it maybe once or twice a month. You guys can just come in and we could just sit down and chit chat. No formality or anything, but you guys can have your coffee. I don't drink coffee, so for you guys to drink coffee, right? For you guys to drink coffee, you guys can have your own coffee and you'll be in the comfort of your own home, and we just sit around and shoot the bull or chit chat or whatever, and ask me anything about the paranormal, and maybe you might have stuff going on in your house that you need help with, and I can probably help you at that point. I might even bring in one of my mediums, like Trish or Karen or somebody to come in and guide you guys if there is a problem, and they can kind of do an instant reading and tell, what may or may not be going on. So I'm going to be putting that on at Meetup later on today as well, and did some advertising out for that. But again, I appreciate everybody coming today. I really do. And if you like the show today, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it. Share it with 5 of your enemies. This is happening because it's Super Tuesday here in California, in Sacramento. It's Super Tuesday, and my internet, of course, I'm with Xfinity. Everybody in the neighborhood's with Xfinity, and I keep dropping off. So this is just a given for Super Tuesday. That's why, in a way, I'm glad I'm not doing a night show, because it's going to be virtually impossible to do a night show with the internet the way it is. Okay, again, I'll be setting the coffee with the ghost hunter. I'll be setting that up tonight, and we'll see how that goes. And also check out the meditation club, and you get 3 meditations, starting 3 meditations a week. If things start building up and we get more people involved with that, we're going to go to a daily meditation. Okay, it could be in the morning, it could be in the evening. I'm thinking maybe early in the morning so I can reach everybody on the West Coast and everybody on the East Coast. I'm trying to find a convenient time for that. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that whole meditation thing, because the way it was written up as a monthly meditation club, it seems like it's only be like one meditation a month, and it's not. Okay, get more bang for your buck. All right. Anyway, I have this chair squeaky. It's a new chair. Who knew? So at least I'm a little more comfortable in this chair. You can see I'm moving around a lot. Anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific in the other studio, and we are going to build a Yoda puppet together. A Yoda Lego together. So hope to see you there. Have a great afternoon and the rest of your day. And for the people coming in tonight who weren't here to see the show at 11 a.m. Pacific, hello, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great rest of your day.